These vast runways and advanced logistical hubs formed one of the most ambitious forward bases ever constructed. Searchable keywords such as Pacific War history, B-29 Superfortress program, and strategic bombing underscored this decisive shift. Yet early results were disappointing. The B-29 was designed for high-altitude precision attacks, but the mission proved far more complex. American crews flying at 30,000 feet faced a powerful natural obstacle that few had predicted with accuracy. The fierce Japanese jet stream roared over the islands at speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. Bombs drifted far off target and formations were scattered, leading to widespread inaccuracies and unsuccessful strikes on Japanese industry. Air commanders in the Marianas felt pressure mount from Washington. They needed results. They needed a strategy that could break Japan's war-making capacity. As frustration grew, leaders such as General Curtis LeMay studied intelligence reports, weather data, and the limitations of high-altitude bombing. The conclusion was unsettling but unavoidable. If the United States wanted decisive impact, it had to abandon traditional precision methods. A dramatic shift was required. The United States Army Air Forces began to consider low-altitude night bombing with incendiary weapons, a strategy aimed not at single factories, but entire industrial districts woven into Japanese cities. Tokyo, with its dense wooden neighborhoods and countless cottage industries, was becoming the focal point of a new and devastating plan. What followed would become one of the most destructive air raids in world history. In late 1944, as America joined the final phase of the Pacific War, the strategic skies above Japan were changing faster than its defenders could respond. Japan's air defense network, once formidable during the earlier years of the conflict, had become a fragile and scattered system strained by industrial collapse and relentless attrition. Searchable keywords such as Pacific theater aviation, Japanese air defenses, and World War II night bombing helped frame the scale of this shift. There was no unified command directing defensive operations across the home islands. Instead, responsibility was divided among regional authorities who struggled with outdated communication lines, limited radar coverage, and minimal coordination. Tokyo, the political and industrial center of Japan, remained particularly vulnerable. By early 1945, Japan possessed only a small number of operational night fighters, many flown by inexperienced pilots. Aviation fuel was desperately scarce due to the American submarine campaign that had hammered Japanese shipping. This shortage crippled pilot training and forced aircraft to sit idle on runways that once bustled with activity. Radar installations were few and often unreliable, leaving vast gaps in early warning capabilities. Japan's defenders simply could not track incoming raids with effectiveness. In contrast, the United States was preparing a revolutionary new approach. General Curtis LeMay, recently placed in command of the 21st Bomber Command, believed that the existing high-altitude tactics were failing due to the jet stream and the dispersed layout of Japanese industry. Japanese urban centers were filled with tightly packed homes, narrow lanes, and small family workshops that fed the empire's war machine. Destroying these districts would cripple production far more effectively than attempts to target individual factories. American analysts concluded that Japanese interception of such a raid would be minimal. Fuel shortages, radar weakness, and nighttime confusion meant that a massive bomber stream passing low over Tokyo could reach its target with little resistance. As the plan took shape, the world was unknowingly approaching one of the most devastating nights in human history. Around early 1945, as air warfare was evolving into a new and brutal science, American planners refined a weapon unlike any previously used on such a scale. Central to the strategy for the coming assault on Tokyo was the M69 incendiary bomblet, a small but devastating device developed through extensive testing in specially constructed mock Japanese neighborhoods in the United States. Searchable keywords such as incendiary bombing history, M69 napalm weapon, and Pacific War technology illustrate the depth of planning behind this operation. The M69 was filled with a thickened gasoline mixture that clung to surfaces and burned with intense heat. When released in clusters from a B-29 superfortress, these bomblets separated and scattered across broad areas, burrowing through roofs before detonating and throwing flaming jelly into homes and workshops. If the Pathfinders missed the initial release point, the entire attack could lose coherence. But if they succeeded, the M69 bomblets would ignite hundreds of individual fires that would join into a massive conflagration. The intention was to trigger a self-sustaining firestorm, a phenomenon in which rising heat draws in powerful winds that feed the flames and intensify destruction. Every detail of the operation was calculated. Loadmasters packed the bomb bays with clusters designed to maximize coverage. Navigators plotted routes that avoided known Japanese observation points. Crews were briefed on the danger of low-altitude flying but reminded that interception was unlikely. As the sun set on March 9, an armada of B-29 bombers prepared to rise from their bases in the Marianas, carrying the tools of a night that would become one of the darkest in world history. In the late hours of March 9, 1945, as America entered the decisive stage of the Pacific War, the quiet darkness over the Marianas broke with the thunder of engines. An immense stream of B-29 Superfortress bombers lifted into the night sky from Tinian, Saipan, and Guam, each aircraft loaded with clusters of M69 incendiaries designed to ignite one of the most heavily populated cities in the world. Searchable keywords such as Operation Meetinghouse, Tokyo firebombing, and World War II air raid underscore the scale of what was unfolding. The crews flew low over the Pacific, skimming beneath the turbulent jet stream that had frustrated earlier missions. At this altitude, the bombers could conserve fuel and maintain tight formation. For hour after hour, they pushed across the dark ocean, guided by their navigators and the faint glow of their instrument panels. When the Japanese coast finally appeared on their radar, the crews tightened their harnesses. They crossed the shoreline with almost no resistance. Japan's weakened air defense network failed to track the incoming force. Only scattered anti-aircraft fire rose from the ground, far too little to challenge the overwhelming number of bombers overhead. Pathfinder aircraft swept in first. They dropped clusters of incendiaries that burst into blazing markers across eastern Tokyo, creating a burning X that designated the center of the target zone. When the main force arrived, the city was already beginning to glow with an ominous red shimmer. Then the bombardment began. Thousands of M69 bomblets cascaded downward, drifting briefly before punching through rooftops. Within seconds, they released trails of flaming napalm that splashed across homes, workshops, and narrow wooden corridors. Individual fires erupted across entire blocks, then they began to merge. Strong winds funneled through the Shitamachi district, feeding the flames until they grew into a single immense firestorm. The rising heat pulled in air with hurricane force. Entire neighborhoods ignited at once. Civilians attempted to flee toward canals and open spaces, but the fire outran them. The roar of the flames drowned out every other sound. Streets vanished under a storm of sparks and collapsing structures. Fire brigades were overwhelmed, their hoses unable to function in the inferno. By dawn, Tokyo was transformed into a vast field of smoldering ruins. More than 16 square miles of the city had been consumed. Tens of thousands of civilians perished, making this raid the deadliest single air attack in human history. For the United States Army Air Forces, the operation achieved its strategic goals. Japanese industry that relied on cottage-based manufacturing suffered a catastrophic blow. The raid also signaled a new phase of incendiary warfare that would continue until the end of the conflict. Operation Meetinghouse remains one of the most controversial and devastating events of the Second World War, a reminder of the terrible cost of strategic bombing and the fragile boundary between military necessity and human tragedy.